What if I told you that a pair of sneakers could destroy a man's entire legacy? That 330 pounds of pure destruction would risk everything, his career, his reputation, his very survival, just to humiliate the most dominant force in WWE history? Roman Reigns, the original tribal chief, the head of the table, has issued a warning so chilling, so personal, that it sent shockwaves through the entire WWE Universe. Bronson Reed didn't just steal a pair of shoes, he declared war on a king. And what happened after Raw went off the air will change everything you think you know about respect, revenge, and what happens when you cross the wrong man. This isn't just about sneakers. This is about the systematic destruction of everything Roman Reigns has built and his terrifying promise to make Bronson Reed pay in ways that will haunt him forever. Welcome to the ultimate deep dive into one of the most personal, most dangerous feuds in recent WWE history. I'm about to take you inside the mind of Roman Reigns, show you exactly why Bronson Reed's actions have crossed a line that can never be uncrossed, and reveal the chilling warning that has every wrestler backstage looking over their shoulder. Today, we're dissecting the chaos that erupted on the August 4th, 2025, episode of Monday Night Raw. But this story goes much deeper than what you saw on television. We're talking about pride, heritage, psychological warfare, and a promise of destruction that could end careers. By the time we're done here, you'll understand why those stolen sneakers represent something far more dangerous than anyone realizes and why Roman Reigns' response might be the most terrifying thing we've ever heard from the tribal chief. Let's uncover the truth behind the war that's about to tear Raw apart. To truly understand why Bronson Reed stealing Roman Reigns' sneakers is tantamount to signing his own death warrant, we need to journey back to where this psychological warfare began, and it's far more calculated than you might think. This story doesn't start with sneakers. It starts with betrayal at the highest level. Picture this: at WrestleMania 41, the grandest stage of them all, Paul Heyman, the man who stood by Roman Reigns through his historic 1,316-day championship reign, commits the ultimate act of treachery. In a shocking triple threat match, Heyman doesn't just betray Roman Reigns, he betrays CM Punk too, helping Seth Rollins capture victory and forming a new faction called the Vision. But here's what makes this betrayal so devastating. Heyman didn't just switch sides, he orchestrated the systematic dismantling of everything Reigns represented. The Vision wasn't just about winning matches, it was about psychological domination, about breaking down the very identity of their opponents. And they started with the man who had been untouchable for over 3 years. Braun Breaker was the first weapon Heyman deployed. The self-proclaimed big dog delivered a spear so brutal to Reigns that it sent the tribal chief into a months-long hiatus, not just from injury, but from the psychological trauma of being dethroned in such a humiliating fashion. This wasn't just a wrestling move, it was a statement that the old guard was finished. Then came Bronson Reed, and this is where the story takes a sinister turn. Reed isn't just a 330-pound wrecking ball, he's a student of psychological warfare. When he joined the Vision, he didn't just bring raw power, he brought a twisted understanding of what truly breaks a man's spirit. Reed studied Roman Reigns, learned what made him tick, discovered what symbols held the deepest meaning. Those custom Jordan sneakers weren't just footwear to Roman Reigns, they were artifacts of his dominance. Each pair was custom designed, often featuring tributes to his Samoan heritage, his family lineage, and his unprecedented championship reign. They were worn during his greatest victories, his most defining moments. In Samoan culture, personal items carry the mana, the spiritual power, of their owner. When Reed stole those sneakers, he wasn't just taking shoes, he was attempting to steal Reigns' very essence. The first theft on July 28th, Raw, was calculated. Reed called them the Shalafala, mocking not just Reigns but his entire cultural identity. This wasn't random disrespect, this was targeted psychological assassination. Reed understood that to truly defeat Roman Reigns, you don't just beat him physically, you strip away everything that makes him who he is. But here's what Reed didn't anticipate: Roman Reigns and Jey Uso's victory at SummerSlam 2025. The perfectly timed Uso splash that secured their win wasn't just a wrestling move, it was a declaration that the Bloodline's power couldn't be stolen, only temporarily borrowed. Reed thought he had broken Reigns' spirit, but instead, he had awakened something far more dangerous, a tribal chief with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. August 4th, 2025, at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, a night that will be remembered as the moment Roman Reigns transformed from a dethroned champion into something far more terrifying, a man consumed by righteous fury. The main event was supposed to be about Seth Rollins defending his World Heavyweight Championship against LA Knight. Rollins, who had shocked the world by cashing in his Money in the Bank contract on CM Punk at SummerSlam, was riding high as the mastermind of the Vision. But championship matches were the least of anyone's concerns by the time the night was over. Picture the scene: LA Knight, the megastar who had clawed his way to a title shot, was moments away from potentially capturing his first world championship. The crowd was electric, sensing history in the making. But Seth Rollins, ever the opportunist, was setting up for his devastating curb stomp, the move that had ended countless careers and dreams. Then chaos erupted. CM Punk, still seething from having his SummerSlam moment stolen, stormed the ring like a man possessed. His attack on Rollins wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming his narrative. The disqualification that followed left Knight furious, his championship opportunity tainted by interference he never asked for. The tension between Punk and Knight was palpable, two fan favorites on the verge of destroying each other. But the Vision had been waiting for exactly this moment. Despite being banned from ringside, a stipulation that should have kept them away, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed ignored authority and hit the ring like twin hurricanes of destruction. Their assault on both Punk and Knight wasn't just about following orders, it was about sending a message that the Vision's reach extended beyond rules, beyond authority, beyond consequences. Breaker's spear to Punk was picture-perfect brutality. Reed's tsunami splash on Knight was a seismic event that shook the entire arena. For a moment, it seemed like the Vision had achieved total dominance, that their psychological warfare had reached its ultimate conclusion. Then the music hit. That familiar sound that had struck fear into opponents for years, that had announced the arrival of the most dominant champion in modern WWE history. Roman Reigns didn't just walk down that ramp. He charged like a man possessed, like a tribal warrior reclaiming his territory. His double spear on Breaker and Reed was poetry in motion, a reminder of why he had held the championship for over 3 years. The Barclays Center erupted as if witnessing the return of a conquering hero. For those precious moments, it felt like the natural order was being restored, like the tribal chief was reclaiming his throne. But Seth Rollins, the architect of this entire psychological campaign, had been waiting for exactly this moment. His stomp from behind wasn't just a wrestling move, it was the culmination of months of planning, the final piece in a puzzle designed to break Roman Reigns completely. Breaker's follow-up spear and Reed's 3 consecutive tsunami splashes weren't just moves, they were a public execution of Reigns' mystique. And then came the ultimate humiliation: Bronson Reed, holding up those stolen sneakers like a trophy, like a scalp taken from a fallen warrior. The symbolism was unmistakable. The tribal chief had been dethroned, not just defeated but humiliated in the most personal way possible. What happened after Raw went off the air wasn't just a promo, it was a blood oath, a promise of destruction so personal and so terrifying that it sent chills through every person in that arena and every wrestler backstage who would later hear about it. Roman Reigns, battered and humiliated, grabbed that microphone with hands that trembled not from pain but from barely contained rage. This wasn't the polished, calculated tribal chief we had grown accustomed to seeing. This wasn't the corporate-approved version of Roman Reigns, who delivered scripted promos with practiced precision. This was something primal, something dangerous, something that reminded everyone why Samoan warriors were once feared across the Pacific. Bronson Reed, he began, his voice low and menacing, each word dripping with venom. "You think you're clever, huh? Stealing my shoes, calling yourself the tribal thief. You think you're sending a message? The pause that followed wasn't for dramatic effect. It was Reigns gathering the full weight of his fury, channeling generations of warrior heritage into what would come next. Let me make this crystal clear. You just signed your own death warrant. The way he said those words, not shouted, not screamed, but spoken with the quiet certainty of a man who had never made a promise he couldn't keep, made every person in that arena understand that this had transcended professional wrestling. This had become personal in ways that couldn't be undone. Those sneakers, they're not just shoes. They're a symbol of everything I've built. Everything I am. My heritage, my family, my legacy. You think you can just take that from me? His voice began to rise, not with emotion, but with the building intensity of a storm gathering strength. You want to take that from me? I'm coming for you, Reed. Not just for my shoes, but for your pride, your future, your whole damn career. But it was what came next that truly revealed the depth of Reigns' transformation. You and Breaker, you're nothing but pawns in Rollins' game. But me? I'm the king. And when I'm done with you, you'll wish you never stepped foot in my yard. You'll wish you never heard the name Roman Reigns. You'll wish you had never been born. The silence that followed was deafening. This wasn't trash talk or typical wrestling bravado. This was a man who had been pushed beyond his breaking point, who had watched everything he held sacred be desecrated in front of millions of people. The tribal chief wasn't just promising to win a match, he was promising to destroy Bronson Reed in ways that would serve as a warning to anyone else who dared to cross that line. What made this warning so chilling wasn't just the words, it was the absolute certainty with which they were delivered. Roman Reigns had never been known for empty threats. For over 3 years, he had backed up every claim, defeated every challenger, overcome every obstacle. When he promised destruction, he delivered it. Bronson Reed had stolen more than sneakers. He had awakened something in Roman Reigns that might have been better left sleeping. The tribal chief wasn't just angry, he was transformed, evolved into something more dangerous than he had ever been before. To understand why Roman Reigns' warning carries such weight, why those stolen sneakers represent something far more significant than footwear, we need to dive deep into the psychology of what makes a champion, and what happens when that psychology is weaponized against them. Those custom Jordan sneakers aren't just expensive shoes, they're totems of power, carefully crafted symbols of everything Roman Reigns represents. Each pair tells a story, tributes to his Samoan heritage with traditional patterns woven into the design, commemorations of his greatest victories with dates and symbols that mark historic moments, and personal touches that connect him to his family legacy stretching back generations. In Samoan culture, personal items carry mana, spiritual power and prestige that connects the owner to their ancestors and their achievements. When Bronson Reed stole those sneakers, he wasn't just committing theft, he was attempting to steal Reigns' very essence, his connection to everything that made him who he is. This is psychological warfare at its most sophisticated level. But here's what makes this situation even more complex. Reed's actions reveal a deep understanding of championship psychology that most people miss. Champions aren't just athletes, they're symbols, living representations of excellence and dominance. Their confidence comes not just from their abilities but from the accumulated weight of their victories, their symbols, their identity markers. Think about the greatest champions in sports history. Michael Jordan's shoes, Muhammad Ali's robes, Tiger Woods' red shirt on Sundays. These aren't just accessories, they're armor, psychological tools that reinforce the champion's mindset and intimidate opponents. When you attack these symbols, you're attacking the very foundation of what makes a champion unbeatable. Reed understood this instinctively. By stealing Reigns' sneakers and mockingly calling them the Shalafala, he was attempting to strip away the mystique that had made Roman Reigns untouchable for over 3 years. He was trying to reduce the tribal chief from a larger-than-life figure to just another wrestler who could be embarrassed and humiliated. But Reed made a critical miscalculation. He assumed that by taking Reigns' symbols, he could break his spirit. What he actually did was remove the last restraints on something far more dangerous. The polished, corporate-approved Roman Reigns was built around those symbols, that carefully crafted image. By attacking him, Reed didn't weaken Reigns, he freed him from the need to maintain that image. The warning Reigns delivered wasn't coming from a champion trying to protect his reputation. It was coming from a warrior whose sacred items had been desecrated, whose family honor had been attacked, whose very identity had been mocked. This is why the warning was so chilling. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about honor, respect, and the kind of justice that transcends sports entertainment. What Reed failed to understand is that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Some insult cut so deep that they transform the insulted party into something more dangerous than they ever were before. By stealing those sneakers, Reed didn't just anger Roman Reigns, he created his own worst nightmare, a tribal chief with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The sneakers were never really about the sneakers. They were about respect, heritage, and the price of crossing a king. What we witnessed on that August night in Brooklyn wasn't the end of anything. It was the opening salvo in what promises to be the most personal, most destructive war in recent WWE history. And based on what's happening behind the scenes, what we've seen so far is just the beginning. Roman Reigns isn't the type of man to let this slide. His warning to Bronson Reed wasn't just words, it was a promise, and Roman Reigns has built his entire legacy on keeping his promises. But Reed, to his credit or his doom, isn't backing down. In fact, he's doubled down in ways that would make most people question his sanity. Reed has taken to social media with a campaign of psychological warfare that's both brilliant and terrifying. He's posting pictures of Reigns' stolen sneakers with captions like "New Tribal Chief," "Who dis?" and "The Shalafala collection grows." This isn't just trolling. This is a man who understands that he's crossed a line and has decided to sprint as far past it as possible. But here's what makes this situation explosive. WWE management is reportedly planning something unprecedented. Sources close to the situation suggest that a major singles match between Reigns and Reed is being planned for Survivor Series 2025, but it won't be just any match. Paul Heyman, ever the master manipulator, is pushing for a stipulation that would make this personal war official, a Samoan street fight with Reigns' sneakers hanging above the ring like a prize. Imagine the visual, Roman Reigns and Bronson Reed tearing through the arena, using every weapon at their disposal, with those stolen sneakers suspended above the ring as a constant reminder of what started this war. It would be more than a match, it would be a public execution, broadcast to millions. But the implications go far beyond just Reigns and Reed. This feud is threatening to tear apart the entire landscape of Monday Night Raw. Seth Rollins, still the World Heavyweight Champion and the mastermind behind the vision, sees this personal war as an opportunity to eliminate his greatest threat once and for all. Braun Breaker, hungry to prove himself as the new big dog, is positioning himself to pick up the pieces when Reigns and Reed destroy each other. Meanwhile, CM Punk finds himself in an impossible position. His interference in the championship match has put him at odds with LA Knight, but his shared hatred of Seth Rollins makes him a natural ally for Roman Reigns. The question is, can Punk swallow his pride long enough to work with the man who once represented everything he opposed in WWE? And then there's Jey Uso, caught between loyalty to his cousin and his own ambitions. Jey has evolved from Roman's sidekick into a main event star in his own right, but this war threatens to drag him back into the shadow of the tribal chief. Will he stand by Roman's side, or will he finally step out on his own? The most intriguing possibility is what's being whispered in backstage corridors, a massive War Games match at Survivor Series. Picture this, the Vision, Rollins, Breaker, Reed, and possibly a mystery fourth member, versus a team led by Roman Reigns. But who would join him? Jey Uso seems obvious, CM Punk is a possibility, but the fourth member could be anyone. Sami Zayn, looking for redemption? A returning Jimmy Uso? Or perhaps someone completely unexpected? This is bigger than sneakers, bigger than championships, bigger than any individual rivalry we've seen in years. What started as Bronson Reed's psychological warfare has evolved into something that could reshape the entire WWE landscape. Roman Reigns' chilling warning wasn't just a threat, it was a promise of war that will consume everyone in its path. The tribal chief has been pushed beyond his breaking point, stripped of his symbols, humiliated in front of millions. But history has shown us that Roman Reigns is never more dangerous than when he has nothing left to lose. Bronson Reed may have thought he was stealing shoes, but what he actually did was awaken something primal, something that might destroy them both. As we head towards Survivor Series 2025, the questions multiply. Will Reigns reclaim his sneakers and his honor? Can the Vision maintain their stranglehold on Raw? Will CM Punk and LA Knight put aside their differences to face a common enemy? And most importantly, when the dust settles, who will be left standing? One thing is certain, Roman Reigns meant every word of that warning. Bronson Reed wanted to play psychological games with a king, and now he's about to learn why some games are too dangerous to play. What do you think happens next? Will Roman Reigns get his revenge, or has Bronson Reed bitten off more than he can chew? Drop your predictions in the comments below. I read every single one and respond to as many as I can. If you want to see more deep dives into WWE's biggest storylines, smash that like button and hit subscribe with notifications on. We're dropping new breakdowns every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until next time, acknowledge the tribal chief, and remember, some lines should never be crossed.